Ugh, stop nagging. I'm exhausted. You handle the kids yourself. Adam had said those words 100 times before, always brushing off anything related to our children like it was my personal hobby and not our shared responsibility. But until that day, I had always believed it was because he was busy with work. I thought he was just too overwhelmed with his job to pay attention to his own family. I was wrong. His business trips had nothing to do with work. While I was home, carrying every burden of our household, Adam was sneaking off to be with another woman. Her name was Lila, and she had no idea what was coming for her. My name is Nain. I'm 48 years old and have spent the last 2 decades being a housewife. My husband, Adam, is 50 and works in sales. We've been married for over 20 years, and for just as long, he has been too busy to be a real father. We have twins, Ethan and Dakota, both 19. Raising them was never easy, but I gave them everything I could. I was there for every scraped knee, every school event, every late night talk when they felt lost. Adam? He was a ghost. Always traveling, always working late, always too tired to listen. Ethan and Dakota grew up kind-hearted and smart, but they struggled with confidence. I worried that I had coddled them too much, made too many decisions for them. And then, just as they were finishing high school, the pandemic hit. School shut down. The world stopped. By the time they graduated, they still hadn't figured out what they wanted to do. No college plans. No career path. They told me they'd work part-time while figuring things out, but I could see the hesitation in their eyes. They were lost, and I wanted to help them. I wanted Adam's input, but Adam didn't care. That day, for once, he was home. A rare occurrence. I took the opportunity to bring it up. Hey, about Ethan and Dakota. I'm worried. Shouldn't we do something to help them think more seriously about their future? Adam barely looked up from his phone. It's because of the lockdowns. Everyone's dealing with this. They'll figure it out. You're too involved. You think so? I hated how easily he dismissed it. This wasn't just about the pandemic. We were their parents. It was our job to guide them. So I pushed. Maybe I have been too involved, but that's because you left all the parenting to me. That finally got his attention. Adam's face twisted in irritation. What are you trying to say? I didn't back down. You blame everything on the state of the world, but we're their parents. Shouldn't we support them as a team, especially now? Before I could finish, Adam shoved his chair back and stood up. Ugh, stop nagging. I'm exhausted. You handle the kids yourself. And as he walked away, he threw one last thing over his shoulder. Oh, and I'm going on another business trip tomorrow. Get my stuff ready. That was it. That was the moment something inside me finally snapped. That night, something strange happened. While Adam was in the shower, his phone rang. Normally, I wouldn't have paid much attention. Adam always took his phone into the bathroom, claiming he needed to be available for work calls. But this time, his voice was different. It wasn't the usual formal, professional tone he used for business calls. It was soft, playful. I was folding laundry near the bathroom when I heard it. Hey, baby, he said, chuckling. My hands froze. Yeah. I'll wear the blue shirt tomorrow. You like that one, huh? And lunch? Let's go somewhere fancy this time. My treat. A business trip, huh? I knew exactly who he was talking to. Lila. I wanted to storm in there. I wanted to throw open the door and demand the truth. But I knew how that would go. He'd deny it. He'd gaslight me. Who do you think puts food on the table? You're being paranoid. It's just a work colleague. No. Not this time. I needed proof. I sat there, gripping a towel, my mind racing. Then the bathroom door opened. I looked up. Adam stood there, towel wrapped around his waist, his wet hair dripping onto the floor. His face, guilty. For the first time in years, I saw an emotion other than disinterest on his face. Nain, have you been there this whole time? I forced myself to stay calm. No, I lied smoothly. I was in our room getting your things ready for your trip. Adam's shoulders relaxed slightly. Good. Let him think I was still clueless. Because by tomorrow, he wouldn't know what hit him. Adam's expression relaxed when I said nothing was wrong. He had no idea I was testing him. By the way, I said, keeping my voice casual, where are you staying on this business trip? I should know in case something happens. He hesitated. Why are you suddenly asking? You never ask about these things. That was true, but I needed answers. I'm visiting your parents tomorrow. I lied smoothly. It'd be bad if I didn't even know where my husband was. Adam scratched his head, clearly thinking. Austin. A colleague booked the hotel, so I don't know the details. Just call my cell if anything comes up. A lie. His hesitation, his vague answer. I knew he was hiding something. But without proof, I couldn't call him out. 3 days later, Adam came back. I'm home. Man, I'm exhausted. I'll skip the shower and go straight to bed. He flopped onto the bed fully clothed. I watched him for a moment before quietly unzipping his bag. His clothes were stuffed inside carelessly. Nothing unusual. No perfume, no hotel receipts. Then I checked his suit pocket and found 2 papers. A divorce application. A marriage registration form. Both filled out. In the wife section of the marriage form was a name I didn't recognize. Lila Powell. My hand shook. This wasn't just an affair. He had already planned to leave me. He was ready to marry someone else the moment he was free. I was still frozen when Ethan's voice came from behind me. Mom? What's that? I turned to see my son staring at the papers in my hands. His eyes landed on the marriage form, and his expression darkened. Lila Powell, he muttered. I frowned. Do you know her? He hesitated. Before he could answer, Dakota walked in. Wait, isn't that the name of the woman Dad always calls when he's in the bathroom or shower? My heart dropped. I overheard him once, she continued. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to hurt you. So Adam hadn't just been calling her. He had been doing it right under our noses. Ethan, still staring at the papers, suddenly smirked. We can use this. What do you mean? I asked. I saw this in a drama once. If these forms are filled out properly, anyone can submit them. Dakota's eyes widened. You mean submit both? The divorce and the marriage? Ethan nodded. Yeah. Imagine Dad's face when he realizes he's legally married to Lila. I was speechless. I had spent years worrying that my kids were too passive, too unsure of their future. But looking at them now, I realized something. They weren't weak. They were just waiting for the right moment. And that moment had finally come. I had been considering divorce, but I thought Adam and I should at least have a proper discussion. Then again, Adam never took anything I said seriously. For now, I decided to trust Ethan and Dakota. That night, Ethan finally explained the full story about Lila. Lila Powell was a 28-year-old receptionist at Adam's company, and Ethan knew her. A few years ago, when Ethan had just graduated high school, he worked part-time at a cafe near Adam's office. One day, an older woman walked up to him while he was working behind the counter. Aren't you cute? She purred, reaching out to stroke his face from his cheek down to his jaw. Ethan had been flustered. At the time, I thought she was just a cool older woman, so I kind of grinned, he admitted. Encouraged by his reaction, Lila handed him her business card. Call me anytime. Ethan never called, but she started showing up at the cafe regularly, watching him, waiting for him. She had been stalking him. I had no idea this had happened. I tried to stay calm, but a horrifying thought crossed my mind. Ethan, you never contacted her, did you? You never met up with her? Ethan hesitated. His face twisted, as if he didn't want to talk about it. I didn't push him. But if this woman, this Lila Powell, had done anything to my son, there was no way I would let this go. And then another realization hit me. Lila's surname. If I was right, she might be the daughter of a certain powerful family. And if Ethan was planning to greet Adam and Lila tomorrow, I suddenly had an idea. I stayed up late, fine-tuning the details. Tomorrow, everything would begin. The next morning, Adam left for work in a great mood. Maybe it was because he had slept well, or maybe he was still glowing from the 3-day trip with his mistress. Either way, he had no clue what was about to happen. As soon as he was gone, Ethan and Dakota called their part-time jobs and took the day off. Then, the plan began. Dakota headed straight to the municipal office. A message popped up in our family group chat about an hour later. Envelope with arrow. Form submitted. It's done. Ethan sent a sticker in response. A smug little emoji grinning in victory. Now, it was Ethan's turn. He arrived at Adam's company shortly after and sent me a message. Envelope with arrow. At the office. Connecting now. I put my phone on speaker and listened in silence. Ethan had placed his phone in his chest pocket, allowing me to hear everything. He approached the front desk. Excuse me, I'd like to see Adam Wilson from the sales department. A woman's voice came through the phone. One moment, please. Then, after a few seconds, Ethan spoke again. Hey, don't you remember me, Lila? His voice was casual, playful. I heard a sharp intake of breath from the receptionist. Lila. Her voice wavered. Ethan? Why are you here? What do you want with Adam? The panic in her voice was unmistakable. I heard the sound of a phone being picked up. She was trying to call Adam's department. But it was too late. The elevator dinged. Adam's voice rang out. Lila, who's my visitor? Then a pause. Ethan? Why are you here? Adam's voice went from confused to panicked in a matter of seconds. Ethan didn't even hesitate. Sorry, Dad. I had some urgent business. You wrote out those divorce papers, right? Mom filled out her section, and we submitted them today. Silence. Oh, and we also submitted the marriage registration. With this lady here. Another pause. Then, in the most cheerful tone, Ethan said, Congratulations on your marriage, Lila. I covered my mouth to keep from laughing. Through the phone, I could feel Adam and Lila freezing in place. Then Adam exploded. Who submits such things without permission? Adam's voice was practically on fire. First of all, you need ID to submit a marriage registration as a proxy. Ethan's response was calm. Oh, about that, I used your passport, Dad. In our district, family members don't even need a power of attorney as a proxy. Silence. Absolute silence. Then a garbled, half-coherent mess of excuses started coming out of Adam's mouth. He was panicking. But Ethan wasn't done. Also, don't act surprised, Ethan continued smoothly. You're the one who filled out the forms yourself, right? And then Ethan dropped one last bombshell. Oh, by the way, when you were on that business trip with Lila, did you guys fight about something? I heard a strangled cough from Adam. Huh? What are you talking about? Ethan chuckled. I mean, it's funny. You actually wrote out those divorce and marriage papers because of an argument, right? Lila gasped. Adam was dead silent, and I could hear the distant sound of office workers whispering. Perfect. Everything was going exactly as planned. Adam's self-serving excuses just kept coming. Lila, listen. Those papers don't mean anything. I was just trying to calm you down. I never actually planned to marry you. Lila's reaction? She snapped. Oh, so I was just a game to you, huh? Now you're telling me we're married? How are you going to take responsibility for this? That was it. I had been listening quietly over the phone up until now, but this was my cue. I pushed open the front doors of Adam's company and walked in. Adam's face drained of color when he saw me. Inane? What are you doing here? I smiled, stepping forward with deliberate, confident strides. Oh, I've just been standing outside. You know, listening to everything. Adam was completely frozen. Then I turned to Lila. Her expression was stern as she crossed her arms. And you must be Lila. Nice to finally meet you. I'm Nain, until recently, Adam's wife. Lila scoffed, rolling her eyes. Yeah. So what? You stormed in here just to introduce yourself? I ignored her and kept going. Actually, Lila, I had a question for you. You're the daughter of that well-known Mafia boss in this area, aren't you? Silence. Lila's face went pale. W what? She knew. I had hit a nerve. I smirked. Powell. That's your last name, right? That construction company your family runs? That's just a front, isn't it? Lila visibly tensed. And then, finally, she shook her head. Shut up. You don't know anything. Oh, but I did. I had figured it out the moment I saw her last name on the marriage registration form. On paper, the Powell family ran a construction business. In reality, they were the most notorious mafia group in the area. And to make things even better, my own family had even hired them in the past for renovations. So I had connections. And I had made a phone call. 2 days ago, I called the Powell family's head office. I told them I was calling from Lila's company. And the second I dropped her name, guess what? The boss himself picked up. It was almost too easy. I calmly explained everything. How his daughter had been involved with my husband. How I had divorced Adam because of her. And how the marriage registration between Adam and Lila had already been submitted. The reaction? Fury. He immediately apologized. And that's when I sprang my trap. When I finished explaining this out loud, Lila staggered back in horror. Her voice was barely a whisper. No! What have you done? Then, in a sudden panic, she blurted out something very interesting. Papa's been saying that once I get married, I have to quit my job and take over the family business with my husband. I left home because I didn't want that. I nearly laughed. Adam, on the other hand, went completely white. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Wait a minute. Does this mean I have to take over the Mafia? I shrugged. Yep, pretty much. Adam physically staggered. This man, who thought he could just run around cheating and lying, had accidentally walked himself into a crime family, and I had helped make sure he couldn't escape. Adam turned to Lila in pure desperation. Why didn't you tell me? Why would you keep something this important a secret? Lila was just as furious. I never thought this would happen, she snapped. And if people knew I was a Powell, I wouldn't be able to work at the company. Their argument was loud. And the best part? The office's reception area was open all the way to the upper floors, which meant everyone was listening. I could practically hear Adam's coworkers whispering. His reputation was burning to the ground. Then Adam turned to me. His face was a disaster. Sweat, panic, desperation. Nain, listen. I'll break up with Lila, okay? I'll retract the divorce papers. I'll come home. We can start over. Please, I'll never cheat again. Just, just take me back. I let out the biggest sigh of my life. Adam, shut up. He flinched. I don't regret divorcing you. And actually, I've been recording this entire conversation. So I'll be using this as evidence to sue you for adultery. Adam's jaw dropped open. He turned red, then white, then red again. Meanwhile, Lila, she was slowly trying to slip away. Just a second, I called out. She froze. You're paying compensation too. Don't worry, I know you can't handle this alone, so I called your father. Lila's eyes went huge. You called Papa? Then, right on cue, a black luxury car pulled up in front of the building. The doors opened. A tall young man stepped out first, then reached for the passenger side. And then, a man in his late 50s, wearing a crisp black suit, stepped out. The real Powell boss. And he was not happy. He walked through the entrance and stopped in front of Adam. His cold, piercing gaze swept over him. So you're Adam. Adam practically shrank in terror. I assume you've heard by now, but since you've married my daughter, you'll be taking over our family. Adam let out a strangled, wheezing sound. Please, anything but that. I have 2 kids. I can't, I don't. The boss smirked. And yet, you had time to play around with my daughter? Adam looked like he was about to pass out. At this point, I was barely holding in my laughter. Adam was cornered. Lila was trapped. And the Powell family was taking him whether he liked it or not. Honestly, best divorce ever. The Powell boss's voice turned ice cold. So let me get this straight. You were fooling around with my daughter while you had your own children to take care of. As a father, I can't forgive that. He grabbed Adam by the chin, forcing him to meet his gaze. Adam shook like a leaf. Why, yes, sir. You're absolutely right. I am so sorry. Pathetic. Even Ethan looked disgusted. Dad, just pay Mom the compensation for the affair, he said coldly. Dakota and I don't need your support anymore. We'll handle our own future. Dakota, who had just returned from submitting the divorce and marriage papers, nodded confidently. Ethan and I are using the money we saved from our part-time jobs to go to college. We're done relying on you. Adam's eyes widened. Wait, what? You two are. But the twins ignored him completely. For the first time, I looked at my children in awe. They were so different from the quiet, mild-mannered kids I had worried about. They stood tall even in front of the Powell Mafia boss. They were strong, smart, unshaken. When did you two become so quick-thinking and confident? I asked, amazed. Ethan shifted slightly, avoiding my gaze. Then, after a pause, he spoke. Well, because of Lila. Lila's entire body flinched. No! Stop! For the first time, her cocky, confident attitude cracked. She looked terrified. The Powell boss narrowed his eyes at her. This sounds serious, he said slowly. Would you mind explaining, Ethan? Ethan exhaled. Then, in a calm, steady voice, he exposed everything. It started right after Ethan graduated high school. While working at a cafe, he was approached by Lila. Aren't you cute? She had said. Then, without hesitation, she reached out and stroked his face. Ethan had been flattered at first. She was older, beautiful, and confident. Then she gave him her business card. Call me anytime, she had purred. Ethan had been young and naive. He didn't realize how dangerous she was. But when he never contacted her, Lila started stalking him. She would show up at his job. She would wait for him outside. And then, one day, she called him in tears. "Please," she begged, "just meet me once. Just talk to me." Ethan hesitated. But when he refused, Lila sobbed dramatically over the phone. "I just want to talk. Please, Ethan. Just for a little while." Ethan felt bad. So he went. But it was a trap. Lila had lured him to her apartment. And the moment he rang the doorbell, she grabbed him, dragged him inside, locked the door. And when he tried to escape, she threatened him. "If you leave, I'll call my family," she whispered. "And trust me, Ethan, you don't want my family involved." The entire room fell silent. Even Adam looked horrified. The Powell boss's expression darkened. And then, in a deadly voice, he growled, "Lila, what have you done?" Lila visibly trembled. "Daddy, I—" But the boss snapped. He grabbed Lila by the collar. "You, my own daughter, trapped and threatened a minor?" His rage was unmatched. "I was already furious that you went after a married man. But this—" Lila flinched but didn't back down. In fact, she talked back. "Well, what was I supposed to do?" she spat. "Our company is full of old men. I just wanted to date younger guys. But I don't know how to approach them normally." She glared at Ethan. "And then, when Ethan rejected me, I was feeling down. So Adam made a move on me at work. That's how we got together." "What?" "A joke. She went from stalking my son to stealing my husband because she was feeling sad? What kind of delusional insanity was this?" I wasn't even angry anymore. I just felt disgusted. At least Ethan had escaped. He had found out where she worked from the business card she had given him and used it against her. That's how he had blackmailed her into staying away. And when he later found out that she was dating Adam, that's when he had decided, "I'm going to get revenge." The Powell boss sighed. He looked exhausted, like he had never been more ashamed of his own daughter. Then he turned to me and bowed deeply. "Nay," he said firmly, "I cannot apologize enough for what my daughter has done, both to your family and especially to Ethan." And then his men, all of them, bowed too. It was surreal. An entire Mafia family apologizing to me. But I wasn't done yet. I turned to Lila. "Lila, listen up." She looked away. "Of course, I'll be suing you for adultery. But more than that," I stepped closer, "I will be pressing charges for what you did to Ethan." Lila's head snapped up. "W what?" Her smug expression shattered. I turned back to the Powell boss. "From what I've heard, there was clearly no mutual consent. So as a mother, I can't let this slide." He nodded slowly. "I understand completely." And then, in a terrifyingly calm voice, "I'll make sure Lila takes full responsibility, legally and personally." Lila let out a horrified gasp. "Daddy, no." "I—" But he ignored her. And in that moment, I knew. Lila's entire life had just fallen apart. And frankly, she deserved it. Lila tried to defend herself, but her excuses were pathetic. "I just wanted a boyfriend. I thought Ethan was my type," she stammered. The Powell boss wasn't having it. "Fool, you need to take responsibility for what you've done." His voice cut through the air, leaving her completely silent. By now, a crowd had gathered. Employees had been watching the chaos unfold, and word would no doubt spread throughout the company. Adam and Lila were finished here, even if Adam was set to become the Powell family's successor. After all this, his position was nothing more than a title. Once everything settled, I left with Ethan and Dakota. On the way home, I remembered what Dakota had said earlier about college, so I asked them about it. Dakota and I have been talking, Ethan explained. After everything that's happened, we realized we want to help people in situations like ours. So we've decided to take the law school entrance exam. Dakota nodded. I wanted to go to college before, but after a rough high school experience, I wasn't sure what I wanted. That's why I worked part-time while figuring it out. But now I know. Hearing that, I felt relieved. All this time, I had been worrying about their future, but they had been thinking things through on their own. I decided to trust them and support them however I could. Later, I heard that Adam had, officially, taken over as the Powell family's boss. Or at least, that's what I thought. But from what I saw on Powell's official social media, Lila's father was still in charge, handling all major operations. Adam was nowhere to be seen. Then, one day my phone rang. It was Adam. His voice was weak, almost desperate. Help me. I'm just doing odd jobs for the family. The successor title is meaningless. The boss and underboss are running everything. I get pushed around by scary guys every day, and if I don't do what they say, I don't even know what'll happen to me. I could practically hear him shaking through the phone. Not long after, I found out Lila had faced her own consequences. Though I had pressed charges against her, she only received a fine since it was her first offense. However, her father took things further. He sent her away for retraining at a church, saying she needed to be rebuilt from the inside out. That meant she wouldn't be coming back anytime soon. 10 years passed. Ethan and Dakota worked hard, passed the bar exam, and became successful lawyers. They spent years gaining experience at law firms, and now they were starting their own private practice, focusing on family and domestic cases. I also obtained my paralegal certification to help them. I wanted to support them with administrative work so they could focus on helping people. Both Ethan and Dakota had built stable, happy lives. They were married now, doing well both professionally and personally. Looking back, all the struggles I faced as a mother weren't in vain. Someday, Ethan and Dakota will have children of their own. They'll face their own challenges, just like I did. That's how life goes. But now, I know they'll be just fine.